my dad kind of saw this interest that I had with this. I mean, I was pretty determined. And one day he was driving me to school and he said, "Hey, would you rather have four-wheelers, which we had at the time, or would you rather have a wood shop?"
Welcome to the Nailed It podcast by Paragon Custom Construction. Today we're honored to have a truly inspiring guest, Marc Glover, the visionary behind Marwood Design Premium Cabinetry. Marc's journey is nothing short of remarkable. What began as a childhood passion has blossomed into a thriving business known for its unmatched craftsmanship and innovation. In this episode, we'll dive deep into Marc's story, exploring the challenges, sacrifices, and hard-earned victories that shaped his path to success. From his first woodworking projects to building a premium brand, this is a conversation about grit, growth, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. Let's get started. Marc, thanks for coming in today, taking time out of your busy schedule. Tell me a little bit about kind of how Marwood got started, how Marc became Marwood.
Okay, so I mean, it's kind of an unusual but story just because I started it when I was 15 years old in my parents' garage.
Very cool.
Obviously, it wasn't like, here, this is what I'm going to start embarking on, building a business. It was more like, I think I could make a few things and have a good time, make a few bucks, and not have to go get a job.
So did you start selling things when you were 15?
Yeah, so I actually built a few things when I was 14, 13, just like a few things for myself. I made a bed frame and like a whole bedroom set, nightstand. And
do you have pictures of these things?
Some of them, maybe, but this was before the whip out your cell phone and take a picture of everything you've ever made in your entire lifetime. So I made a bench, actually. The first paid project I ever made was a bench for one of my sisters, actually, and she just gave me something out of like Pottery Barn or something like that and said, "Can you make this?" And I said, "Sure." So I made it. So I do have a picture of this bench I made. I think I was 14 at the time.
Okay. And your sister actually paid you because she had a job, she was older than you?
She's almost 10 years older than me. And so I don't know if she was trying to save money or if she was just trying to give me something to do, but
but you were grateful for it.
But it turned out great. She still has it. Sadly, it's been demoted from a fixture inside the house to something in the garage, but and hey, she personally thinks I should be buried in it someday. So
so it's an open, so you can open it.
It's got a lid on it. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to have to get a picture of that.
Yeah.
So from there, you started, 14, 15, you're building it where? Like in your parents' garage? Because I heard that you maybe commandeered the garage.
Yeah. So I actually started just using, at the time I was in middle school. So I actually convinced my dad to drop me off at 6:30 in the morning on his way to work at the middle school so I could use their tools before school started. So that's kind of actually where it all grassroots started, was actually just building using the school's machinery before I'd even taken a wood shop class, actually. So it was a little interesting that way. The teacher was awesome and he was good about, letting me use the shop, even though I had never even taken the class yet.
That's very cool. I think teachers have a huge impact in children's lives, and I mean, to hear that is super cool. So, okay, so you go to the wood shop at school, you go to the garage. Where does it go from there? How'd you get to where you are now?
So just to kind of finish off, my dad kind of saw this interest that I had with this. I was pretty determined, and one day he was driving me to school and he said, "Hey, would you rather have four-wheelers, which we had at the time, or would you rather have a wood shop?" And I was like, "Oh, I'd much rather have a wood shop." Like, it was an easy answer. So that weekend he sold the four-wheelers and then basically said, "Hey, we'll take this money, we can buy some tools." I think he was looking at it more as like a hobby that we could do together, not so much a business at the time. But then he had stuff and he was busy, so basically he bought this machinery, and then we built a workbench together, and then he never basically went into the shop again. So, and I kind of took over, and it started as a single car garage because there was a boat also it was a 2-car garage, but there was a boat parked in half of it.
Okay.
And basically it started a single car, and then I just kind of started encroaching on using the full 2-car garage, and then kind of spread into using the other 2-car garage. And then it eventually bled into, we built another detached garage in the backyard where we actually built like a whole spray booth. And so I had a 4-car garage basically.
Okay. And how long were you there? And what kind of money were you doing? What age was that?
So I was there from 14 or 15 till I was 19. I worked basically in that garage. I've actually never worked for anyone ever, so I just have continued to do it without working for anyone, just kind of picking apart other people's work and why they would do such things, and making the changes to make it a little better.
Where's your first shop? So you're 19.
Yeah, so I left for 2 years, went on a mission.
Yep.
I came back, and then
you speak Spanish.
Yeah, so I learned Spanish, which was super helpful. I learned a ton of stuff on my mission from a business standpoint, which was good.
Yeah.
Managing people and some of those things. And then I came back and I rented my first shop, which was in Sandy, and it was 1,200 square feet.
What was that rent?
Ooh, it was, I think it was $790. It was a lot back then.
Almost $800 plus utilities.
Yeah, plus
so
utilities.
So were you kind of staring down the barrel going, how am I going to make this payment?
I mean, I basically had to decide. I did not want to live at home, but I also wanted to rent a shop. So it was like the only way for me to make this work was to rent a space and stay at home, at least for the time being.
Yeah.
Even though I totally wanted to be out on my own for sure, but at the same time, it was like life's kind of just picking and choosing it'd be nice if you got everything all at once, but it's just not how it goes.
Yeah.
Kind of had the same thing even with like cars. Like I bought a box truck before I owned a regular pickup, so I went from a Mini Cooper to buying my first box truck.
So did you take any dates out in this box truck, or did you borrow mom's minivan?
I actually was married before I bought the box truck.
Okay.
So
she's been in the box truck on plenty dates.
She was. I was probably more stoked to buy that box truck that was the biggest piece of junk than any vehicle I've ever purchased in my life. That was like a big day in my. That was huge to me to go from. Before that, I had just a little trailer I would tow around.
Well, like an 8x10 single axle?
I think it was an 8x14 single axle, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you couldn't load it up too heavy?
No. I mean, I just kind of, with time, you just kind of have to make things work. I mean, I used my parents' Suburban when I was all in high school. I just would load it up with cabinets or make 1 million deliveries to some of these job sites.
Yeah.
My dad had a couple of trailers, none of them were enclosed, so sometimes I'd use those.
When it's nice weather.
Yeah, obviously you don't have the options, that maybe we have now that are ideal, but you just work with what you've got.
Okay, so shop 1,200 square feet, Sandy, $900 or $800 a month plus utilities, still living at home. When because I think you're on your 4th shop, 5th shop, what?
Yeah, so we're on.
Not counting the home.
Depends on how you count it up, but we went to Sandy. We were in 1,200 square feet there I was there 18 months. I got my first employee there, and then shortly thereafter we moved to Lehigh. And we were there for 12 months, just a 12-month lease. And
that was bigger, more expensive?
Yeah, it was double the square footage, so I think it was 2,400 square feet. And that felt sweet at the time, at the beginning. And then we were bursting from the seams after a year. And then from there, we moved to out to West Jordan, and let's see, that shop would have been 4,400 square feet, so kind of double again.
Okay. So this is like in 2.5 years, you've basically, doubled, and now you're on your third location that isn't the garage.
Yeah.
And doubled again.
Yeah, and then we were there for probably 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
I ended up buying that building, and then I ended up buying the unit next door as well. So we doubled again, essentially.
Okay, so you stayed there, bought, and then just expanded.
Yeah, we bought the space next door as well. And then we were there for in total, we were in West Jordan for almost 10 years.
Nice. And so when you look at Marwood, when did it actually start? Was it in high school? It was like, hey, this is my company, this is my name. You built the LLC, or was that you came home from this mission and you were like, oh, I actually need to make a business out of this?
Yeah. So I mean, there wasn't like a clear defining moment of like, today's the day that it all changes. Like, It was more of like in high school, I met some kid who, did screen printing. And so I don't remember how we got in discussion, but I said, hey, I want some shirts. So I have these shirts from high school that said Marwood on them. Like,
very cool.
Obviously it wasn't, I mean, now I look at them and laugh, but back then it was a big deal. I wore them to school all the time because I had shop classes. My senior year, I had work release for myself every other day, and then I had shop classes and one English class basically like my whole senior year. So I mean, I would say it started in 2006 is what I typically tell people, which I mean, I was 17 in 2006, so 16, 17 right now.
And is that when you kind of organized the LLC?
Yeah,
and people were making checks out to Marwood, or they making checks out to you?
No, they were making checks out to Marwood. So I set up an LLC and got a bank account. And
oh, that's good, because
the beginning,
we've got a direct line to the IRS. We just want to make sure that
you've
followed all the rules here.
But yeah, so I tell people 2006 because that's actually when we registered the name of the state.
Okay, so we're closing in on 20 years.
Yeah, 18.
Okay, 19. So tell us about where you're at right now.
Yeah, so 2 years ago we moved from West Jordan because we were just bursting at the seams. We had 2 shifts, so we were running 20 hours a day, 4 days a week. Well, really it was 5 days a week for the most part.
Yeah.
And I was living there. Like, it was nonstop. I had shop foremans that would run a day shift and the night shift, but there was always something. So I would get phone calls at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, or I'd be there a lot of times till like 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And it was a lot of work. And I had ordered some machinery and I was totally planning on staying in West Jordan. I definitely believe in lean manufacturing and, whatever space you have, utilizing the space you do have rather than just looking for space to be the answer.
Right.
Over the years, I've met with several consultants, and one of the consultants I met with, he told me something pretty interesting. He gave me an acronym, PMS, which means he asked me this question. He said, "What would it take to double what you're doing?" And I, being small-minded, I said, "Oh, that's impossible. Like, that's not." And he's like, "No, I'm asking you, what if I asked you to do double? What would you need to change to do double?" And then he said, "But here's the criteria of PMS: no people, no money, and no more space. Those are the 3 conditions. But you've got it. Anything else is on the table."
Yeah.
And that really made me think a lot about how we were operating and how we're looking at our challenges and our bottlenecks. And so I truly wanted to stay in that shop just because we were so small.
Plus you owned it.
I owned it. It was close to my house, which was nice. And it was in a little nicer area than, an industrial park or something like that. But I had ordered some machinery, and it was right after COVID, and I think it was like, I don't know, 15 months out when I ordered it. And so I had some time, and I was like, oh, I'll figure out how to make this work. And we looked at adding a second level to our shop and all sorts of mezzanines. And in the end, it came closer to getting the machinery, and it wasn't going to work. So I could not make it work and flow nicely. So I went into like a frantic mode of searching for a new location. And so we put our place up for sale, and we found a place. I don't know, I think it was within 30 days. We had an offer on our place. The conditions were that we had to be out in like 45 days, something crazy like that.
And that's a lot. I mean, you were 4,400 square feet. You still, I imagine, that's still a lot to move.
Well, so at that point we were 8,800.
Okay, because that's when you'd taken the over. That's right.
So we were just under 10,000 square feet with the office space, because we did do a build out of some offices. So we were just under 10,000. But our new place that we just moved into 2 years ago is just under 17,000 square feet. So pretty much double again.
Yeah. So when's the next double?
I don't know if I'm ready to talk about that yet. I mean, part of me says never, but I know the reality of the situation is once we get to the point where we're at max capacity where we are, then of course everything's on the table. Yeah. I mean, even space, I guess, but I definitely want to maximize the space we're in, because I mean, even now, like, we've already filled the space pretty well, but when you take something that's full like that, you really start to think outside the box. If you're really not considering those three things, those three things are like easy outs, in all honesty. Buying machinery, sometimes it's an easy out to say, I'm going to buy this and it's going to solve my problems. And sometimes it is the solution. And same thing with space. Like, sometimes it makes, I mean, in the case we ran into, it was a no-brainer. We were completely out of space. Every shop I've ever moved into, I've drawn the whole building in AutoCAD, and all the space requirements for every piece of machinery, and I mean, in that shop,
everything.
We had overlap on every machine, so you couldn't operate a machine next to another machine because you'd be in the other machine's space.
Workspace, yeah.
I mean, we kind of joked that you could probably, touch somebody's butt in every space, because at one point we had so many people there. We had 20-something people in this tiny shop. I mean, that was when we were in 4,400 square feet, I think.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, we've only added a few more team members, and in the last few years, but we've added a ton of automation.
So going back to this PMS, right? Yeah. You opted for space. You've only added a few members, right? So you added a little bit of the personnel.
Yeah.
I imagine obviously you spent some money and space, but that allowed you to then double your capacity, or more than double.
Yeah. So, what's interesting is before we even added people, I mean, threw money at the problems or added the space, we actually almost doubled where we were from, I mean, just hearing those, I mean, considering those things. I mean, we had to constantly think outside the box.
Back to the drawing board, look at it again. How do we make this
It's not
better?
to say
How
those
do we
things
improve it?
Shouldn't be considered at all. It's just they shouldn't be the first things you consider.
Right.
And so after we had already gone to the drawing board and said, hey, let's solve all these other problems with, processes or just different solutions that way, and we'd found ourselves pretty well maxed out. So after that had happened, then we, I realized, hey, look, like, we've pretty much exhausted every option here at this place. Now we've got to just bite the bullet and move. And it was good. Like, I will say, it was a hard move to move the whole business like that and to start everything, new positions, but it's definitely worth every penny. I mean, we added some cool machinery. like an automated crane system that talks to a CNC, and now we can see our inventory live at all times. It's really like a pace setter in the sense that the crane's always waiting on the people rather than the other way around.
Yeah. That makes sense. So what was one pivotal moment in this last, almost 20 years that was, changed the trajectory of your company?
I would say when we got our first CNC, that was.
What'd that piece of equipment cost?
I mean, it was a little over $100,000.
So you're getting a legit CNC, because you can buy CNCs today for a lot cheaper. So you got they're the
all
Cadillac.
Yeah, I mean, so I had a guy approach me. He had just sold a cabinet company, and we had mutual friends. I mean, this guy was a lot older than I am. He was in his 60s already.
Yeah.
He had just sold his cabinet company, but he approached me and said, "Hey, I'm interested in buying into something," and he felt like we were a good candidate, so he bought in. I took all of his buy-in money and bought a CNC.
Very cool.
And I mean, we went from cutting everything by hand, doing everything by hand, table saws, line bore machine, a dado, doing all this stuff by hand. And when we bought this CNC, we went from what we could do in 10 hours, we could do in an hour.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
and what's the error percentage, right? Obviously, like the machine only commits an error, but it's input error, right? So it's still like, operator error. When you're cutting everything by hand, what was your waste factor, you would say? Like 10% of everything you made was made wrong.
I mean, to be honest, so here's the difference, because when you look at it from a standpoint of switching to a CNC, you go from, we started with cutting everything on saws, but we were building all of our cut lists in Excel, so there's potential that somebody puts it wrong in the program in Excel or the sheet. And then there's also the potential that the person cutting it on the saw sets the fence at the wrong dimension or reads something wrong. But when you switch to a CNC, you also have to switch to where your design software is connected to your machine. So the beauty in that, and it's not always the case, but that was the step that we made. We committed to using a program, we call it it's called Cabinet Vision, but it's our design software that's linked directly to our machine. So if we've drawn the job, we can cut the job. I mean, in minutes. If it's if it's drawn 100% accurate, we can just literally send it to the machine in 10 seconds, and we could be cutting the machine on the parts on the machine.
And how were you drawing it before?
Oh, so I actually, when I was 21, I started taking some college classes, because I was actually going to school the entire time that I started this.
Okay. So you're school full-time. Work full-time.
I came home from my mission, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was in school taking, 16 credits a semester. I was trying to max it out. But so I took AutoCAD classes. I kind of went to school with a different mentality. I literally just took classes of things I wanted to learn. So
rather than like, oh, that's the degree I'm going to get. I'm going to take a bunch of this stuff that I don't really have any interest in, but I need it because it's a prereq.
Yeah. So I took an AutoCAD class, and I loved AutoCAD. I thought it was fun. I took a cabinet making class just because I was curious to see what they would say about things, even though I was doing it. You can
always learn something new, right?
Yeah, I mean, the machinery that the school had or the college had actually was, hands down, it was top notch. I mean, they had the CNCs that we have now are the ones that they had back then too. I mean, same brand, in fact.
Yeah,
and
that government money.
Yeah, I mean, obviously money's not an issue for anything government funded, but it was good to get a different experience level out of those things. So I think it created like a pretense to me getting into the machinery of CNCs and the Cabinet Visions, the software we use, they use at the school as well now.
Okay.
And have for a while. And so some of that was really helpful to kind of just get, even though I couldn't afford to buy it, at least to get my feet wet in it and to see it and touch it and get excited about the future of it, I think.
Made it a little more comfortable.
Oh, yeah,
more
for
comfortable
sure.
jump.
Yeah. So getting the CNC was a big deal. Like, that was a game changer. I mean, in a lot of ways.
And what would you say, let me ask you this. What would you say to, somewhere out there, somebody's listening and he's a startup cabinet company or he's a finished guy and he's trying to figure out what direction to go. Like, do you look back and say, oh, I wish I would have bought that CNC like at the very beginning? Or like, at what point would you recommend somebody who's like, kind of in your position years ago? When do you take that plunge? So to speak?
Honestly, I would just say don't do it. I would say go find something else to do. But I mean, I say that, I mean, seriously, but joking at the same time. Like, people have asked me, like, would you have done it sooner? I mean, in my case, I couldn't have really done it sooner, but would I do it again? Honestly, I don't know if I'd do it again. Knowing where I am and what it's taken to get here, I don't know if I could start over again. Like, that would be hard. Like,
it would be really hard.
Really, really challenging. I have a nephew who's like kind of he's worked for me actually since he was a kid. And he's starting a business, and I just look at where he is, and part of me is like, oh man, I mean, I would never, if he asked me today, I'd tell him to not do it. I mean, there's a level of, there's things, and you just don't know how it's going to pan out. Like, I mean, in this case,
risk associated with it.
Like, the risk that's associated with it. I did get lucky that way because I started a business when it didn't matter. It didn't matter if it failed because I had a house to sleep in. Yeah. Like, I had food on the table. It didn't matter. I didn't have a mortgage to pay. I didn't have bills to cover. Like, my liability was zero.
But do you feel like some of those pressures, for me, I think
they're definitely healthy for you. Like,
because they they push you a little bit, right?
But I will say, like, it's hard to tell what you're sacrificing in the moment. I was all in on this. I mean, I've eaten it up since I was a kid. I mean, as soon as I got into it, it was like, even in school, I subscribed to every woodworking magazine when I was in school. It was like, I would walk into class and whip out magazines, just, woodworking projects, and read up on them and search the internet for things, like, and I just ate it up. Like, there was no true, like, value of money that was driving me towards this. Yeah. And that's where I would say, if you're trying to get rich, go find something else to do. Get into sales, get into anything else.
Because you're saying there's easier things to do.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, where I am today, I mean, we've spent millions of dollars on machinery. Yeah. I mean, that means millions that we've made net to buy machinery. Yep. So we've done a ton of work to get there. And if you look at other businesses, the startup costs are so much lower. Right. I mean, manufacturing or cabinet making, I mean, it can be pretty high on the actual startup costs. And it's not like it's, it's really detailed work.
Especially at this custom level that you guys are working in. The spaces.
I mean, we try to double check a lot. We'd have processes now to double check everything. And even with our double checks, there's still things that go wrong. And so at times it's definitely, I do feel like there's been moments where things have just lined up like perfectly. I mean, if we had 3 hours to talk through this, like, I really have, there's been just one thing after the next where it's like the next person I meet, the next person. And it's like these relationships I've built over the years. I mean, I don't think it just happens by coincidence. I mean, I was in 9th grade, for instance. I played on the basketball team, and my coach at the time, he was a lumber salesman, like for wood, like cabinet making wood.
Like hardwoods.
So, hardwoods. Yeah. So, I mean, it was like the first into our first distributor. I mean, he gave me great pricing, even though I was a 15-year-old kid rolling up, or at that time, even 15, 14,
rolling up in the Civic and putting hardwood in the back of the Civic.
Having my mom drive me to the lumber store and throwing in the back of a Suburban and just whipping out cash and paying for it right then and there. And I mean, just different things like that have occurred throughout. I mean, the builders I've found over the years, the interior designers that we've ran into with time, and just the relationships is huge on where we've gotten so far.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that pays tribute to who you are as a person, right? Your personality, your work ethic, because it's not. I mean, I hear you say don't do it, right? But I think if you were that 15-year-old kid again, you would do it, right? Now you're in your 30s. You look back and you go, man, I've killed myself to get to this point, right? And the Mark I know is still working a lot, which that's something. Well, anyway, go ahead.
Well, I would do it again, like
100%.
I wouldn't tell someone to do it though. But the honest truth is, like,
but if they had the same passion that you have, right?
I mean, I enjoy projects.
Yeah.
Truthfully, I look at this. I don't go into work every day and look at this as honestly, even making money. I look at this as the true payout is the progress. Like I love to see where we've come from to where we are today.
The progression.
And then to see, okay, well, where can we take this? Because, I mean, I can remember, doing all this in my parents' garage to now what I was, something that a project that would have taken me months. I could go and build in a day, or maybe who knows, less in some cases.
I remember
we build a kitchen a day almost now.
I literally remember you said, hey, this particular project you guys did for us, we're like, oh, I'm putting it in on this day. And I was like, oh, so like a few weeks out, you're like, oh no, we're going to deliver it next week. And so it was like, for us, a relatively large remodel and a hefty cabinetry budget, and you guys turned it out and delivered it in a week.
Yeah. So part of that whole like lean manufacturing thing, I really love that stuff as well. Like I've gotten really into it over the years, and just because some of it, I mean, it's just obviously the situation of being the owner, but I love to see the fine detail of the processes. And I mean, I like to go tour other shops. I went to Europe last year with our machine company and saw some incredible facilities that with automation, and I mean, even some of them that were super automated but super custom still. And I truly enjoy that side of it too. I would say if you're the type that just, maybe you got a little ADHD, I don't know, maybe you just don't like to, do the same thing, then maybe it's a good fit. But at the same time, like, it is challenging. You got to make hard decisions. You got to work a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't count the hours in the day that I do work. I count the hours in the day that I don't work. I mean,
true.
Those 10 years in West Jordan, I worked 100-hour work weeks every week almost. Like, that was not uncommon at all. Sometimes I could tell you how many hours there are in a week purely because I started doing the math on how many hours I wasn't working and how many hours I was spending sleeping. And I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but at the same time, like, I loved every minute of it as much as, I mean, it was difficult at times, but I still look back on it and it's like, it was a crazy time in my life, but I also feel like, I mean, the progress in those 10 years was awesome.
Yeah. So tell me this. This brings up another question I want to talk to you a little bit about. So we talked about the CNC kind of being like that pivotal point. Your dad, you've got 4 little girls. Yeah. I was at your shop on Halloween. They came in. They're all dressed up, handing out candy. And so cute family. Tell me how or what was that pivotal moment that was, because you get to a point, it's like, right, you have a family, you try to want to have a life, you have a business, this business is consuming everything. What was kind of that pivotal moment that was like, oh, I need to make these changes, or this is how I'm doing the work-life balance? Or talk to us a little bit about what that looked like and how you balance that now. Because I think that's a question a lot of people have in, how do I make time for my business and this family that I have?
So I kind of had a horrible mindset at the beginning because, and my wife would tell you this, because I looked at it like Marwood was there before my wife was.
Okay.
And so at times I definitely prioritized the business
over the relationship.
I mean, we kind of joked at times that it was, maybe it was my mistress because I was spending a lot of time there. But at the same time, my wife is the most patient person in the entire world. Like those 10 years, she was always there. She always had my back, whether that was in the early years, like she would even bring me and a couple of the guys that worked for me breakfast or lunch. And I mean, she was really, really patient during those years because that was brutal. Like, it wasn't brutal for me because I was enjoying it, but it was brutal to see, like, at times to look back now and see how much I put her on the back burner. And I mean, it took me pretty much, I pretty much just had like a breakdown. Like it was the craziest thing, but at one point I literally got so burned out from working and there was some things going on that it was crazy because I have amazing drive to like do things, and one day to the next it was just like a switch had been turned, and I had no drive. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to do anything. And anyway, it got to a point where me and my wife ended up sitting down and really talking about like, okay, things have got to change. Like this can't keep going. I couldn't keep going at the pace I was going at. It wasn't fair to her. It wasn't fair to my kids. And so we came up with, we ended up, my wife was already doing therapy with somebody. And so we did couples therapy, and it was really good. Like, honestly, it was great because the therapist said something to me once that I will never forget, that basically she just said, well, you can look at this one of two ways, that you can keep doing what you're doing and at some point it's going to fall apart. Yeah. Your wife's either going to divorce you or you can look at this like, you want this, that she really is the most important thing, and you can prioritize it and you can keep doing what you're doing, but at a different pace with different priorities. And that definitely made me think about, that, and she mentioned too, like, well, you could either cut your company in half when she divorces you and then try to rebuild this whole thing. Yeah. And that's not what like got me to like change my ways, I would say, but it definitely was like, oh yeah, no kidding. Like she really is half of this. So I need to give her more time. And
although she's not there with you in the shop, right? And
she like, has at times been there. I mean, I will say that she, even the earlier stages for sure. I mean, I remember we went to my brother's wedding, reception, the whole 9 yards. It gets done, like wrapped up 10 o'clock or whatever. And I was like, oh, by the way, I need your help tonight. We're going to go install something all night long. And she was like, all right. And she totally did. She went and helped me. I mean, this is a crapshoot of a project that we were doing at the time. It was like freaking 20 degrees outside. There was no heat in the house. There's no electricity. There's like no lights. We're working off of lamps in the middle of the night, but I'd made a promise to this guy that it would be done. And so, I mean, she was there. So many instances like that. I could go on and on for hours telling you about those stories, and I would definitely say I wouldn't be where I am today without her help.
Yeah. So she's maybe not been with you in the trenches every day, but she's been there bringing food to you. I mean, I'm like starting to get emotional. You're talking to me about your wife. I'm seeing you tear up a little bit. And
Sure.
So it sounds like you've got, just an incredible wife, incredible family. And so what was it that you guys kind of landed on with the therapist? Like, hey, make this a priority.
So
we
made some, one thing we do every week, we have a date night every week, which I'd probably been on a handful of dates the first 10 years we were married. That's how bad it was. I didn't realize the value in that. In my mind, it was, maybe money not well spent or
expensive food.
Yeah. I mean, and the therapist suggested that we do it, make it a priority, like prove that it is a priority. And so that was one of the things we changed that I feel like made a huge difference, because it gave us time together, as well as just making it, I'm proving to her, she's proving to me, like it's a priority for both of us. Every week we go on a date. Yeah. Same day, same time. And I don't let things get in the way of that at all. Pretty much. Yeah. It's pretty rare. I mean, if there was something that came up, we usually talk about it and then we just shift something. But honestly, it's probably moved since we've started doing it, probably 2 or 3 times, and we've been doing it for years now. So 2 or 3 years.
That is very cool. I think about myself being a business owner, trying to balance a relationship, be there for kids. And I think a lot of people want to be business owners because they want that freedom. They want, hey, my son's got a soccer game at 3 p.m., right? I can leave because I'm the boss, right? But guess what? Like when the phone rings at 6 and 7 and 9, you're the boss. There's nobody else there, right? So I think there's a lot of glory to it. It makes me think of the picture where it's like you've got the big iceberg on the bottom and just a little bit on the top, and people just see the little bit on the top. And because I will say, I think that from a cabinet company, and I've worked with numerous different cabinet companies over the years, and I appreciate our relationship, and I just think that you guys, I mean, every single project, you just nail it every time. And I really appreciate like just your guys' candor, things that I maybe wouldn't pick up, you guys pick up, you make it right. And again, I think that just goes back to, you loving it and wanting to provide the best, right? And I think that that's true with, your business. Obviously now in your relationship, you've had to learn a few things along the way, but I just think that you guys do an awesome job.
Yeah, I definitely I think it means more to me than money. Like all of my guys would tell you the same thing. If there's something that's chipped or if there's something that's broken, I'm like, fix it. Like you don't need someone to point it out to you. I thoroughly believe that we're the professionals, so we should be the ones picking up. We don't need people to tell us.
Amen.
We all have eyes.
Yeah.
I do have one installer that's colorblind a little bit, so occasionally, something like that could fly under the radar. But
yeah.
But for the most part, like I truly believe that if these people I truly believe that this relationship between the client and us, or the builder even, that it's more of a relationship of trust. Like we're giving you, here's your number that will do the work. And I think that number, the builder even doesn't know what does that truly mean? Like there's specs and tons of plans drawn, but it's much more than that, where if we wanted to cut corners, we could totally cut corners. I mean, things that may not be seen, may not be noticed, may not be understood. But as a company, I think I want to take everything. If they're entrusting us with their money and their project, I want to make sure we're knocking it out of the park for them.
Yeah.
Because that's, in my mind, that means more than anything else, is the trust aspect of it. From either, a relationship with the builder, or a relationship with our clients or interior designers, that at the end of the day, they're using us because they trust us. That they definitely don't feel like we're shady or doing anything, that's irresponsible or negligent. And I think if you went back and asked all of our clients, I've every project they'd give you like, oh, they were our best sub.
Yeah.
If they, we have people, if they're not happy, like I tell them, you should let us know. Like we'll take care of anything truly, to make sure that they're happy, because I have a big belief that is, I mean, we don't do any marketing. We haven't spent $1 this entire time on marketing, but for us, it's, referrals.
Yeah.
People, they're going to talk. The question is, what are they going to say? And if they only have good things to say, that's great. That's a good situation to be in.
One of the things I always say to my clients, we provide a fairly extensive pre-construction aspect of our projects, where we really like to flush everything out and price everything out. And the reason I tell people that we like to do that is because I jokingly say we want to be talking at the end of the job, right? If I give you a bunch of frivolous allowances, then guess what? At the end of the job, you spent way more than what I guesstimated you'd spend. And a lot of times people aren't happy with that finish, right? And they feel like they're being taken advantage. And so, we align with that, with the transparency. We want to deliver what that expectation is. We try to always walk people through projects. Obviously we get our clients into your showroom. You have a great showroom. I want to just talk on one thing, just as we kind of wrap things up here. Let's talk a little bit about like the technology in your shop, because I've been in a number of cabinet shops, and some of them admittedly are a little bit barren with equipment, and yours is like chucked full with equipment from one end to the other end. And there's this lift cruising through, and we've got some footage of this that we'll put in this video, and it's grabbing sheets and putting them over here, and it's cutting it out and it's shooting it over here, and you got people over here, and then there's a paint booth, and you're like drying it in the paint booth or the paint oven. Or just kind of give us just a high level. You mentioned millions of dollars. What if you had to put hey, there's $10 million of equipment in there? Or what would that look like? And just kind of give us high.
It's probably between $2 to $3 million worth of equipment.
Okay.
But, I mean, at the end of the day, I truly just want us to be better than we were, right? I mean, that's my main goal. And I don't look at automation from a standpoint of eliminating people. And I mean, with every purchase I've ever made, as far as machinery goes, it's not the goal to eliminate someone's position so much as to make the, other operators or people in my team members, their lives better, truly. And to increase flow and production with those, and put them in a position where, instead of, the crane's a good example, because the crane was a purchase that was didn't make a lot of sense in the standpoint of, it wasn't our bottleneck, so I shouldn't have done it. But I did it because the safety aspects of it. We were moving sheets with forklifts. It's just dangerous. We had some sheets fall off a rack once, and nobody got hurt, thankfully. But it was enough for me to say, okay, I'm not going to put somebody at risk in order to do this every day. And so I bought this crane system because for the safety aspects of it, but it also took the person who was spending so much time driving and moving sheets around, and it allowed me to put him in a position where I can pay him more because we're accomplishing more.
Yeah.
And I look at that from in all aspects and positions in our shop. So I don't want someone to be doing something forever. My goal is to not have somebody who's gonna sand boards forever for the rest of their life. It doesn't, I wouldn't ask anyone to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself, to be honest. And so we've automated, our spray machine. We've automated, we have an edge bander that has a return conveyor. We've automated, and I have plans to automate more and more and more. I mean, that was part of why I went to Europe, was to see how Europe's about 10 years ahead of the US usually with automation and machinery. So, and in some cases even more, but in the woodworking industry, at least, it's about 10 years. So it was really cool to see some of the things that, are normal there and very uncommon here. Like the crane system we have, it's the smallest one ever installed in the US that we put in our facility. and it's unusual, and people come through on almost like a weekly basis. There's somebody there to see some of our tools, but that one specifically because it's so abnormal that it's in such a small shop.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say small, we're considered kind of a medium-sized shop, I would say.
For sure. But
small in the aspect of, I mean, some of the shops I went to in Europe, I mean, my shop is probably 1/100th of the size of some of those, maybe.
But they're not doing custom cabinets.
Some of them are actually.
Are they?
There was one.
They have a custom portion where
there's
they're doing
there's people. Well, there's shops that do, obviously like the IKEA type stuff that they're just pumping parts out all day long. But there was a shop I toured in Portugal that, I mean, these guys could build anything, and they had the sweetest setup ever. They had metal tools there in the same facility. I mean, if you went into
metal tooling, everything.
Yeah, they even had a 3D printing, like, robotic arm. They had solid brass. They were, doing inlays and cutting the stuff there. It was awesome. Like, it was the highlight of that whole trip for me, because I had gone to all these big shops, and like you said, they were just high production, kind of boring, not what I really am into. And then we went to this one shop, and I was like, holy crap, Ola, these guys have got it figured out. Like, they are doing such custom stuff, and they're implementing so much of this automation into it.
Yeah.
But they had people where it mattered most, like the truly custom stuff, instead of having people doing some of these other processes that can be fully automated.
Yeah. So that sanding, polishing, like all that stuff.
Yeah. And that's definitely the direction we'll go. We'll continue to automate as much as we can without disregarding quality. And it definitely can be done. And we'll continue to head that direction for sure.
We appreciate it. We know you've got a super busy schedule. You've got clients, probably 100 phone calls since you've been in here.
Probably a few.
And but we thank you for your time. Thank Marwood, and just really appreciate the work that you do and the standard that you guys have set here in the Valley. And don't forget to subscribe. We come out with an episode every week. We appreciate you guys joining us, and we'll see you next time on Nailed It.